There was a report recently on the Daily Dot about Cloud9 potentially contracting, trying to make some kind of arrangement with Incarnati0n to join their team. And since he's a mid laner, the obvious implication there would be that in some way High would step back, or maybe there'd be a sub situation going on here. And so Incarnati0n, for anyone who doesn't know, is a player who's considered a prodigious solo queue talent in Europe, but he was banned from Season 3 onwards, permanently banned, because it was claimed that he was both really, really toxic and that he DDoSed people. This was the allegation. And Riot just permabanned him. But apparently he's going to be unbanned at some point, and so now there's a possibility for him to play. And I'm sure teams would be interested, and apparently Cloud9 is one of these teams. And so this is an interesting topic because it brings up what's already been fervently discussed for the last year or so in terms of Cloud9, which is, what if they were to replace High? What if they were to bring someone else instead of him? Could that change the problems that seem to currently hold them back from being a potential world contender? Despite what a fantastic North American team, what a great domestic Western team they've been, they haven't been at the level to actually win a world's level tournament. So first of all, let's talk about High's issues, because why replace High? Before you look into who you were going to replace him with, why would you replace High? Well, just in terms of as an individual player, he's, for the last year or so, I'd say ever since, for me, it was only sort of the first, maybe up until about the spring of 2014, when High, even domestically, you could say, right, he's still a top level player at his position domestically and can still hold his own. He's still good enough where it's not an issue. He was already starting to become a liability around 2014 there. And obviously against the European teams, he'd had problems. He had problems against Fnatic, problems against Gambit. These were the teams who gave him difficulties because they had the star mid laners, the greatest mid laners in the Western scene's history, pretty much. Alex Sage, Xpeke. Not only is he now losing lane quite often, even in NA, it's not just even internationally against Europeans, against international teams, it's against NA players now. He loses lane fairly often, much more than you would expect of an elite level team. He dies way too easily, and his champion pool has been shown to be way too small. Like, it's gotten to the point now where it's really hard to see what is reliable that you can give High and know that he'll win on. Okay, Zed, yeah, we know that one. But then even then, you look at that, if that's his strength, right, give him Zed. Well, now put him against international competition. There's players there who, if a Zed's available, you're going to have to ban it yourself because you can't risk that, we're going to have to first pick it. There's players who are Zed players out there who'd murder High if they get Zed. And so now the champion pool is going to be a liability. Losing lane, his problem is individually there's issues there. Mechanically, obviously, there's issues. That's part of what contributes to all this. But the problem that has always outweighed his issues has been the shot calling issue, because apparently, based on what we've heard, he's the main shot caller. Apparently, Meteos did the objectives. I don't know if this has changed, but this is the old story. Meteos did objectives like Dragon, Baron, and Lemonation was involved in pick ban. But High is the main shot caller in the team. And you look at Cloud9, and obviously, shot calling and the way they react to things and where they make plans and act on them is their main strength as a team. Their strength has never been one player. Yes, at one point in time, Meteos was a monster. But then when they went internationally, that became less than so. So their strength has always been based on the shot calling. So there's the problem, is that to remove the most obvious weakness is also to remove the most obvious strength of your team. And that's their issue. Now then, that in itself, we've played the waiting game. We've tried playing this situation out so many times that we realise that actually it's not that, that strength outweighs the weakness. No, if you want to win, actually that strength doesn't outweigh the weakness. That's actually been proven. They've had these chances again and again and again, and they're not going to be a world champion with this current lineup. It's just not going to happen. So now, even if removing the weakness rather, takes away from the great strength, that's actually at this point in time, if your goal is to be a world champion, what is now going to have to happen? And so that some changes must be made if they're going to be a world championship team. And the most obvious one, and probably the right one, is removal of High. Now, if you remove him, it gives you a chance to be a world champion. It means that you're not going to have as good shot calling initially. Is it possible to get to the same level of shot calling? I'd actually probably say no. I'd probably say it probably won't happen. Now then, do you need that level of shot calling? Here's a key distinction to make. No, I don't think you do, actually. You look at other teams, fantastic teams that are world-class level teams that are better than Cloud9 is, and they don't have as good shot calling. In fact, at times, these problems that Cloud9 has had, the weaknesses, and other players being weak and them being in bad eras, meta rather, they've been able to overcome that and still win despite it because of the fantastic shot calling. So in some ways, the amazing shot calling sometimes has been a band-aid to their problems. We've seen some of their seasons, well, last summer, obviously, they actually were weaker during part of the season and they came strong at the end and made that run. The games they would win looked convincing because they'd win these amazing comebacks and they'd always find a way to win back in the game. But if they were beasts, they'd have that sick shot calling and then they'd be ahead. They'd be ahead in the game. They'd be winning games easily. And then on top of that, that would make them a dominant team. But they haven't been a dominant team in a long time, even domestically, even if they're making these LCS finals. There have been teams beating them. There have been teams beating consistently. That's just been the way it is. So they don't need as good shot calling. So that's actually worth giving up. But the point is, if you're going to give that up, then you better be getting something worthwhile that's going to make it so that you will be able to go to a higher level, that the upside has to be there. Now, here's the thing. I want to make this point before I go on to Incarnation as a player. You don't have to do this. You don't have to give it up. You don't have to have your main goal is to win the World Championship. That sounds like blasphemy, right? No. Every interview you have to say, no, our goal is to win the World Championship. We'll do anything to win. You know, all these famous sayings. First of all, Cloud9 historically has not shown themselves to be a team who'll do anything to win, because it's not like High suddenly became an issue. No, it's like Link and CLG. It's not. I mean, I'm not conflating the two as though they're identical. But Link's problems have been persistent for a year, well, 2 years in his case, and they haven't removed him because they've still thought, no, we can find a way around this. So that's actually saying that you won't do anything to win. There's certain options that you're willing to take, like, I'll take this option, and if that works, I'll do it. But otherwise, I'm not willing to do this to win. So there's certain things you're not willing to do. There's very few people, despite how many competitors will tell you, oh, I'll do anything to win, I give everything for this sport, blood, sweat and tears, all those cliches, all those things that we hear again and again. There's actually very few people really do that. The only people who tend to do that are the ones who are bordering on sociopathic, the guys who are willing to give up their family, give up love, give up their time, give up hobbies, maybe even give up like certain types of food and go on insane diets and just make their whole life about the game. Yeah, those are the guys who are willing to do absolutely anything to win. Most people aren't. Most people who are normal people and just competitors aren't actually willing to. Within the bounds of what they think's reasonable, then they'll do what they can to win. Maybe they do try hard for them in their context. But the point I'm making here is, it's not actually the be-all and end-all to win the World Championship. Now, depending on sort of personality you are, maybe the sort of personality for your identity, it is important, like I mentioned those other people, that you do have to win. Winning is everything. But you know what? Even beyond the idea that you don't have to win, it's actually all right not to win, but to play in a wonderful way, to play in a unique way, to have an off-the-wall style that doesn't conform to whatever the meta is currently now. This is one of the big balancing acts in games, I think, is that on one hand, there's a tendency to try and just conform to whatever the meta is now, because if it happens that your strengths can match up to the meta and you can adapt to it, maybe you can win by just doing whatever is powerful now, picking this champion, playing this certain way, adopting this style, playing this one particular fashion against this one opponent. But there's still something to be said for playing the game beautifully, for expressing yourself. Remember, this isn't just science, this sport. It's an art form as well. To play a certain way is beautiful. Even if Roger Federer now plays tennis, and it's quite unlikely he's ever going to win another major title. There's players who are better than him. It's hard for him at his age to get through these schedules. He plays against styles which don't work for him, like Nadal's style. But would I tell him, oh, change up your whole style, try and do X, Y, Z? Yeah, if his end goal really is only to win, maybe there are things he could change. But the way he plays is beautiful, it's graceful, it's got elegance, it's got art to it. It's expression of what he thinks and how he feels about the game and his philosophy on how the game should be played and how he wants to play and what his natural response is. So there's something to be said for that. And in that sense, I do see a value in Cloud9 and the current lineup they have and the current shot calling they have and even High's place in the team. Because even when they do have to rely on this insane shot calling to do these crazy comebacks and to get back in games and grind their way back in and make that key decision that turns the game, there's something really awesome about that, watching that. That's one of the reasons why they're my favourite Western team to watch. It's the same when the old Gambit team. I always say Gambit whenever I give this example between Cloud9 and Gambit. I never say Moscow 5. Because Moscow 5 were a dominant team, the best team in the world, then one of the world's best teams who could compete at the best. Gambit was never the world's best team. Gambit was a team who, on the right day, could beat a world-class Korean team, could compete with a top international team, but weren't going to be the world champions anymore. But they had that same style. The difference is those initial strengths where they would smash people at 20 minutes were gone. And now they had to use the crazy team fighting to come back into crazy games and make this ballsy play. Now, Cloud9's style isn't ballsy, isn't crazy like that. It's more like, it's great decision making. It's having a great mentality, which High seems to contribute towards, of not giving up, of just taking each situation and mentally resetting and looking at what options you're presented with here and what the information is and saying, right, here's a decision I can make here. And then you go into that situation and then, okay, now reset again. Now let's look at what's before us, look at what the enemy's trying to do, what we're trying to do, what would be the correct decision here. And those repeated correct decisions, good decision after good decision after good decision, bad decision, but you follow it up with a good decision. That's what gets them over the finish line. That's what gets them back in the games. That's what wins them games where they have a slight lead and then they can convert it into a win. There's a lot to be said for that style of play. And if they want to play that way, and maybe they're not the guys who are driven that to winning has to be everything, maybe they really do enjoy more actually playing with certain people around them. A lot of times, I'm the sort of person who would attack that sort of... when people say that, oh, I just, like, he's such a good friend, I wouldn't want to kick him out of the team. Because most of the time it's bullshit. Most of those players, if you knew them behind the scenes, a month after that guy is kicked, will be like... yeah, whatever. I mean, he was good, but I much prefer play with this guy now that I win and all that sort of thing. That's just an excuse people give for when they have bad teammates or when they're losing. In Cloud9's case, a bit like other situations in esports I can think of, rare ones, they do seem like a scenario where the unit is very strong, where they've got something special about this bond here. So if they decided they did want to play and just have these games where they can compete and win international domestic titles, they can do okay, maybe have a sick run internationally, make like best case scenario, like a semi or a round of 8. If they are willing to accept that, then there is something to be said for the beauty of playing that way. Now then, if you do that, then don't give us all the spiel about, oh, we give everything for this game and winning the World Championship and representing America is our only goal and it is all that matters. Like, yeah, okay, mate, whatever. Like, should we all just read the fucking Pledge of Allegiance every morning when we play the game? What the fuck is this bullshit? Like, that's unrealistic. Now then, saying that, let's imagine a world in which Cloud9's goal really is to become the world champion, either in Season 5 or Season 6. In this world, we need to replace High. We've established that. First of all, as a quick side note, no, I would not go along with this like harebrained theory that people have that like, yeah, and then the thing is, because elimination is also a weak point, right? What I'd do is I'd remove elimination, I'd put High into support, and then I'd put a sick mid laner in the mid lane. Then they'd still have the shot calling, but then they'd have High, and then that idea is actually crap. Because first of all, would it have the same shot calling? To a degree, but we don't know actually, because we don't know how his shot calling would be from support rather than mid. Also, let's not forget this. Where's the assumption that he would be even a decent support player? We have no evidence for that. So now we might have an even worse support player, but a really good mid and high shot calling. Well, who says that as a total package will actually be better than the previous Cloud9? Who says that will open up the ceiling, allow them to still win? It'd make more sense to me if you've decided elimination is a problem, then let's get a great support player in as well. Remember, you don't have to have this godlike shot calling. So, or just keep elimination and put in the other player, because elimination seems to at least know what he's doing at his job. So I don't think that's an issue. So ignore that. I would definitely not go the route of putting High as this shot calling support player. I think that you're just begging for more problems. That's going down the CLG fucking path where like everything has to work out and we still don't know if it's going to be the best case scenario. Now then, should it be Incarnation who comes in? Well, first of all, if we bring Incarnation in, it is almost certain, how can you say that? Because High's shot calling is so rare that it is almost certain that Incarnation, if he was to become the shot caller, would not be as good a shot caller as High, or not as good a shot caller as High for this group, this unit, because there was something special about High as a level of shot caller for this particular unit. We don't know how High would be if you put him in CLG. Maybe it wouldn't work there. But for this unit, it worked great. Now then, we hear the stories that are all-stars last year where High had the collapse long and they had to use Link, that apparently Meteos was shot calling and they seem to still have some of the Cloud9 quality. Hey, maybe that's a positive. Maybe Meteos can take over some of the shot calling. Maybe other members can share the duties and it'll be close, but not quite as good. Okay, if we can improve heavily the mid lane, maybe that's enough to be an even better team. That seems plausible to me. So, okay, maybe we can bring Incarnation. He doesn't have to be a shot caller, he just has to be a mid laner, which is what apparently he can do. Now then, apparently he is this prodigious talent. From what I've seen, I buy into it. I don't buy into the fact that he's going to be good on the pro scene, but I buy into the fact that of all the prospects that we've never seen in the pro scene, but who've been solo queue talents, he seems like he should be one of the best. He seems like he should be one of the locks to at least be a good pro, if not a very good pro. Yeah, I could buy that. Mechanically, he should be much better than High in terms of champion pool, in terms of strength as a laner. Apparently, he's a fantastic laner, so I could buy all of this. This all sounds great. So yeah, on the skills alone, I think it's worth the gamble, actually. If your goal, remember, is to be the world championship, if your goal is to retain this Cloud9 identity of the style of shot calling and to just be a great team and a cool team and have that magic, yeah, maybe not. Go with the original lineup. But if the goal is to become world champion, this is a decent gamble. Now, the problem becomes the personality side. Because remember, part of what made that special Cloud9 team, and again, this is another area where I have to make the distinction. I know every fucking team tells you I love my teammates and it's great and we've got a special bond and we do things together and they're like brothers to me and all that. But again, first of all, behind the scenes, they don't say those things. Secondly, once those players are gone, magically those amazing relationships don't seem to happen and there's a new teammate they're talking that way about. You have to stop buying this bullshit. Again, it's rare that it actually is a team that is that brotherhood feeling, that really does have that cohesion and natural chemistry on top of then building up good chemistry of playing together a long time, getting to know each other. Cloud9 seems to be one of those rare teams. So it seems unlikely, based on what we know so far of Incarnation's personality, that he will be a good fit for that sort of a team. Now, again, do they have to be that sort of team to be a better team than Cloud9 now and to be world champions? No, they don't. But if they want to retain that identity, that's where I have my question marks about Incarnation, because there's the massive toxicity issue, there's the DDoS issue. Now, whether or not these are all entirely the case, from what I am aware of, there certainly seems to be some grain of truth to it. Usually when someone does have a reputation as being massively toxic, there's something to it. Like, I've never said that Forgiven has no toxicity issues and that he never was super hard on teammates and he never was maybe even abusive. He was. The difference is, in his case, I can see a decent reason, which is not a justification, but it's a good reason as to why. Like, in a weird way, it's coming from a positive place, where it's not that he's complaining about someone here because he lost and he's like mad and just raging. It's because he's mad that his team can't be better, that they can't be the best. Now, in a weird way, that's such kind of energy, a kind of burning red flame, that if you could just make it into a cooler kind of blue flame of like passion and just determination and drive and channel it a different way, that would be a very positive force that would lead you forwards. That would be an emotional leader. That would be someone you could follow. You could take confidence in the fact that, you know, this guy wants to win so much, he's going to go. See what I mean? In the case of Incarnation, we haven't seen that. Actually, this guy seems, in terms of his toxicity, to have been someone who's just raging, who's been quite abusive. Even if he didn't DDoS, he was using the idea of DDoSing to be abusive to people, essentially. I can see issues there where, of all the Western teams, I look at that team who's Cloud9 and say, this is the team that seems to need that chemistry aspect the most because of their previous style of play. Now then, again, going forwards, if we're going to rebuild and retool Cloud9 and not have to go off the old way, we can do a new style of team. But if we do so, the other players have to have that in mind. Either they do some bang-up job and they can convert Incarnation to their way of thinking, okay, maybe the group has a strong enough identity and force to it that they can act with this agency over him. I'm not discounting it, it just seems a bit implausible. But I would hope the other players know that if you bring in a player like Incarnation, it has to become more like a job. Like, it has to become like a professional sports franchise. If you're a player for an NBA team, you don't always get consulted before they bring in this other player in a big deal. They just bring in another star player. They say, right, you two play together and win a world championship. You'd be like, well, I don't really like him and he seems like an asshole. No, sometimes you don't get consulted on that. So it'll have to be like that. If we're going to go the pro sports route and his goal is to win the world championship and that's it, then we have to go that route. And so it doesn't matter if this guy doesn't get on with Meteos or if he argues with Sneaky over some way he plays. That's just going to be the way the team is. And now the goal is find a way to work in-game around that, even if the outer game isn't as great, and to find a way to win. So overall, what is my verdict on if they bring in Incarnation? This is the problem. It basically comes down to which I want. Do I want Cloud9, the awesome team, to exist that has this great identity that's incredibly entertaining to watch? Yeah, in a sense I do. In a sense I'm selfish and I want to see that. But on the other hand, I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of great games from them. I'd also like to see a team actually win Worlds from the West. That would be cool, right? To actually have a competitor from the West. Not just from the West, but to make the overall scene more interesting. To have some kind of battle back where it's not just the Asian scene dominating. So in that sense, yeah, I'd love to see Cloud9 become the team that can do that. And so if they're going to do that, yes, I think High has to go. Now, if High goes, who are our options? Yeah, it's hard to see at the moment. If it was up to me, if I was the general manager of Cloud9, I would replace High, but the player I'd replace him with would be one of the European mids. One of them that's shown some potential, has some strength, has to be a decent laner, and I'd pick up one of them. So if it was up to me, my shortlist would start off with like, well, why don't we start with Power of Evil? If we're not going to go with Power of Evil, I mean, in an ideal world, maybe you could steal away Featherman. It seems unlikely because he's in Fnatic now, but okay, Power of Evil, there's one. If you want to go crazy, go someone like Froggen. But it sounds like, I doubt he's going to leave Elements because it seems like that's his team, etc. And again, if you bring him in, it's a very different style of play to the others. But I think Power of Evil's a decent one. Who else have we got available there? Obviously, Nuke Duck's not really one anymore, and also he doesn't really conform to the personality aspect. Yeah, who else? At the moment, yeah, maybe that's the sort of person. At least I'd go with the reason I'd go with that sort of person is because first of all, he seems to have a fairly positive attitude, and secondly, he's now got some competitive experience. You've at least got games you can judge him off. Whereas Incarnation, we've never seen him competitive, so we can't judge him on that. Taking those out of the equation, if we're going to gamble, hey, the upside to Incarnation, personality issues aside, does seem to be very high. Of all the gambles of players we haven't seen, he'd be the best. I agree with that. If we're not going to go Asian, if we're going to get some European or North American player, he seems to be the best pick. Especially because the other picks you can think of, they're either Asian players or imports. So Ryu, Zhao Weizhao. I mean, these are great players, but would they really fit a client team like Cloud9? Probably not, especially with the communication emphasis that we need here. Shifter, I mean, it seems like the ship sailed on Shifter and Link, etc. We kind of know their playing styles. We kind of know their flaws. I don't know if anyone would really want them to come into their team like this, or if they could even be shifted in that sense, or phased in so that they adopted the personality. Probably not. So in that sense, yeah, I wouldn't actually mind the gamble for Incarnation. I just don't think that it's so overwhelmingly great, like, oh, this is going to be it, this will turn it around. I think it's worth a gamble. I also don't mind, they don't have to admit this, if Cloud9 just went with the old approach, just keep the same lineup, have cool games, but we're never going to win worlds. That's fine too. So speaking of Fantasy League scenarios, if you want to play Fantasy League of Legends, the sponsor of my show is Vulcan, vulcun.com. And if you sign up there with the code name Thorin with 3 O's, Thorin, so THOOORIN, then they will match your initial deposit by 100% up to $1,000, and you can play Fantasy League of Legends.